Welcome back to The Bible is Art, where we look at the literary artistry of the Bible. And in this week, we are looking at the symbolism in the structure of Genesis. The biblical authors make heavy use of number symbolism, but not in the sort of weird number symbolism of like the books, like the Bible code where, in 2012, Saddam Hussein, blabbity blah. No. They use number symbolism in a similar way to how color symbolism is used in literature. That is, it may have its own symbolic nature. So red can symbolize love or lust or passion, or white could symbolize purity. And sometimes it can allude back to other situations where that color is used. And we're going to look at the symbolism of the number 10. And we're going to do this because last week we saw that the book of Genesis is organized into 10 sections, and there's a symbolic reason for that. But before we understand that, we got to look at how the Bible uses the number 10. And the first time it uses the symbolism of number 10, it's actually the place where it sets up this symbolism is in Genesis chapter 1. And in Genesis chapter 1, this symbolic use is subtle. It's not as if the author says, and God did something 10 times. No, you gotta look a little bit more carefully. And so in Genesis chapter 1, God creates the heavens and the earth. And it's fascinating to see what specifically about creation our narrator wants to point our attention to. And he wants to point our attention to the means, how God creates the world. And he creates it by speech, by speaking. And 10 times, the narrator tells us, God said. So God said, let there be light. And God said, let there be an expanse, etc. So in Genesis chapter 1, this symbolic connection is established between the number 10 and creation. Now, you may be thinking, that's a sort of slim connection, right? Just counting up 10 verbs. And I would agree with you if this were the only time. But time and time again, the biblical authors will layer on examples of the number 10 symbolism. The next time the number 10 symbolism is used is in the plagues of Egypt. There are, of course, 10 plagues. But the numerical connection is not the only connection. There's a creational connection. If you remember back to Genesis 1, in Genesis 1, the way that God designs the universe is that he designs it into parts, into 3 parts, into heaven, earth, land, and sea. And he'll keep coming back to these 3 parts, first creating them and then filling them with inhabitants or leaders, rulers. How does this work? So in day number 1, God creates light. In the second day, among other things, he creates the sea. And on the third day, he creates land. Well, then he's going to start this pattern over again. So in day number 4, he's going to go back to that sky area where he created light, and he's going to create sun, moon, and stars. He said to rule over those spheres. And then in the next day, he's going to make fish to be in the sea. And then on the last one, he's going to make land creatures, including that great land creature man. Okay, so these are the 3 spheres, and this is the sort of architectural space of the universe that's going to come back in the tabernacle and then in the temple and in fascinating variations on that theme. But when we look at the 10 plagues, those 3 spheres of creation come up again, because God is going to go through those 3 spheres over and over and over again in a systematic way, cursing, punishing, plaguing things in those spaces. So let's just think about these plagues. So in the sky, what does he do? Well, he turns it dark, the day to night. And he will have gnats flying in the sky area. In the sea, he will turn the water to blood, and he will have flies presumably coming out of the water. Or you have on land, God cursing, God plaguing the livestock and multiplying the frogs. And so he's making this connection between 10 and these creational spaces. But what's the point? Here's the part, here's the wonderful insight. What God is doing is he is de-creating the world. He's de-creating the Egyptian world. He's going through these spheres and he's deconstructing it, disordering it. You see that? Because they are oppressing, enslaving the Hebrews. And so this beautiful, well-designed world that this character God put together in the beginning, if you rebel against him and his little images, well, then he will take that world apart. The third use of 10 creational symbolism stuff comes with the 10 commandments. And once again, there's this connection to the number 10, but that's not it. Because there's something that's sort of hidden in most of our translations that comes through in the Hebrew, and that's that they're not actually called the 10 commandments. They are actually called the 10 words. What's the point? Well, some of them are commandments, right? Yeah. But Moses wants to call them words because he wants to make the connection between the speaking creation words in Genesis 1. Well, why? What's the point of the illusion? The point of the illusion is that it's not that he is creating physical stuff here. He is creating social order. He is creating moral order. And he wants to make that connection so we understand that this is not just a sort of random collection of laws or commandments. No. That this is a means of organizing and structuring social, moral space. Okay? And so you can see all of those themes and variations about how our authors go about it. So what does this have to do with the structure of Genesis? Well, Moses organizes the book of Genesis into 10 sections because he wants to communicate that the book itself is bringing order. The book itself is organizing. He's doing the same things as Genesis 1 and as the 10 Commandments. It's bringing structure right at the beginning in the first book of the Bible. And that's important for reading because there will be times in Genesis that are very evil and dark, where the characters are doing things that are just horrible. Murder, rape. And when we understand that the book is bringing order, we can understand, we may not understand how, but we can understand in general that even in those situations, God is going to bring order. And it's fascinating that in the last act of the book of Genesis, this is a point that the final protagonist, Joseph, will make. After Joseph's father, Jacob, has died, the brothers come to him after, remember, early in their life, selling their brother into slavery. And they're worried that Joseph is going to do evil to them now that their father is dead. And Joseph has this climactic statement where he says, "What you meant as evil, God meant for good." And so Joseph embodies what the reader needs to embody by the end of the story, having this understanding at the end of the story or at the end of the first chapter that, oh my, the author is bringing all of this into an order, into a design that you might not be able to see when you're in it. I hope you're seeing how the Bible is indeed art. And next week, we are going to jump in to the great 2 first lines of this masterpiece.